Chapter 7, The Governor's Hall. So we're going to shift here to a little more plot, not so much deep analysis and description from Hawthorne about Hester and Pearl. So this is called The Governor's Hall, and remember, Governor Billingham was introduced earlier in the book. He has requested that Hester make him a pair of gloves, which she had fringed and embroidered to be to his order, like whatever it is he had asked her to do, which were to be worn on some great occasion of state. And it does say here that even though like Governor Billingham certainly has some status in town, that he actually has descended from the highest rank. So he's not in the community, or maybe like in Boston or Massachusetts overall, he's not as high up as he used to be. But he still does have an honorable and influential place within the colony itself. So he is dressing the part, and clearly he's not too afraid to sort of show that he is important. There's another reason that Hester is going to his home, besides delivering the embroidered gloves. She's also going because she has heard that some people in town think that Pearl should be taken from her, that Pearl is of demon origin, and that it would be better for a different person to raise her, that perhaps like Hester's soul would be contaminated by her demon child, or that maybe a more Puritan family, a more pure family would be better to raise Pearl. And apparently Governor Billingham is one of the leading people who have this opinion. So she wants to talk to him because clearly she does not want to lose her child. This next paragraph explains that the legislature, meaning Governor Billingham, and other legislature within the state itself, like, in Massachusetts or Boston or Salem, or just people in general who are in the government, have far too much involvement in private life. There's even a reference here to the fact that, there can be, disputes about the right of property in a pig that can become part of like a legislative act. So I would definitely say that this chapter reveals some of Nathaniel Hawthorne's attitude towards the Puritan community of this time period, which is tone. So just keep in mind that tone is the author's attitude about the subject. And so we're going to have some examples here of Hawthorne being kind of sarcastic. The tone is sarcastic, the tone is critical. The legislators have far too much involvement, clearly. So she is really concerned, which makes tremendous sense. I wanted to point out here too that, and this is the second or third time we've seen this, where Hawthorne uses the word we. We have spoken of Pearl's rich and luxuriant beauty. So by including us in the conversation, he's sort of breaking the third wall. He's, directly speaking to the reader and including us in this community, like as if we're part of those who are talking about Hester, witnessing Hester's life, hopefully not judging it in the same way that the Puritans are. Pearl is described again as having this fire through her, which is definitely represented in her clothing. So on this particular day, Pearl is wearing a crimson velvet tunic that is sort of in an interesting, stylish design, and it is embroidered in fantasies and flourishes of gold thread, which sounds to me just like the Scarlet letter, and it is. It even says that what Pearl is wearing looks very much like the token that Hester is doomed to wear on her bosom, meaning the Scarlet letter, the red letter with all the gold embroidery. So what's interesting is that Hester created this dress for Pearl on purpose, and I'm sure has her wearing it this particular day on purpose. She lavished many hours of morbid ingenuity to create an analogy between the object of her affection and the emblem of her guilt, and torture. But in truth, Pearl was the one as well as the other, and only in consequence of that identity had Hester contrived so perfectly to represent the Scarlet Letter in her appearance. So perhaps, I think it's worth thinking about, discussing in class, like, why would she want to sort of rub it in to all the people in town that Pearl is the product of sin, that she is a representative of the Scarlet Letter? Maybe to put them off, to make them not want to try and take her child from her. But that could also backfire. It might be like, oh my gosh, we need to take that child away because that child is becoming a sin. Who knows? It's a bold choice regardless. Behold, verily, that there is the woman of the Scarlet Letter, and of a truth, moreover, there is the likeness of the Scarlet Letter running along by her side. Come, therefore, and let us fling mud at them. This is what the children say when they see them walking to Governor Billingham's house, looking so much alike. The way that Hester's letter on her dress resembles what Pearl is wearing, that they're like, oh, look at them. Let's throw mud at them. So again, sinners, they're the sinners here, which I think Hawthorne wants us to definitely notice. He certainly sees the irony in this too. Pearl was a dauntless child, and look what she does. She doesn't just yell at them. She runs at them and she starts to chase them and scare them. So, and it works. They freak out, these other kids, and they run away from her. She's like an infant pestilence, like a scarlet fever, whose mission was to punish the sins of the rising generation, which is what they're doing. They are sinning when they yell at her. She screamed and shouted with terrific volume, which doubtless caused the hearts of the fugitives to quake within them. The victory accomplished, Pearl returned quietly to her mother and looked up smiling in her face. So, I don't know. This could be one reason why they think that they should take her away. That oh my God, this kid is wild. We have to do something with her. Without further adventure, they reached the dwelling of Governor Billingham. So I think it's important to notice just the descriptions here of the house, which go on, honestly, for about a page and a half, woven in a little bit with Pearl and Hester talking to each other. But it's a large wooden house. It's very cheerful. It even has little bits of decorative glass in the stucco of the house. None of this seems to me very Puritan. It seems almost like a little miniature palace, the way it's described, which I said is ironic. So the rules of Puritan sort of, modesty don't seem to apply to Governor Billingham. Furthermore, it's decorated with all sorts of interesting art, figures and diagrams suitable to the quaint taste of the age, which had been drawn in the stucco when newly laid on and had now grown hard and durable for the admiration of after times. So Pearl is really fascinated by this house because it's just really cool. And she notices that the sunshine is reflecting off some of the little decorative glass and things that are in the stucco, and just the mirrors and all the things in the house. It just seems sparkly. And Hester says, my little Pearl, thou must gather thine own sunshine. I have none to give thee. So in this moment, she is worried, clearly. She's worried about losing her child. They go up to the door, and the governor's bond servant answers it. So he is a free-born Englishman who is now 7 years a slave. So this is how some people came to America from England, is if they were poor, they came as indentured servants and they would work for another English colonial family, and then that kind of work off their duties basically, and were to eventually become free themselves. But I think this is another example of Hawthorne's attitude about what it meant to be a colonist, that here someone who was free in England is now a slave in America, which is the exact opposite of why people wanted to come to America. So obviously it's more complicated than that. The King George during that time was a very oppressive king. People who lived in England were very poor. So a lot of people wanted to come to the colonies. in America, but it's debatable. Perhaps it would have been better to stay put in England. It's hard to say. The point here is it's complex. It's not just like everybody wants to go to America, it's going to be amazing, because it clearly was not. So Hester says that she wants to see Governor Billingham, and the man who opens the door says, he hath a godly minister or two with him, and likewise a leech. Ye may not see his worship now. So he says she can't see him because he's talking to other people. And the godly minister or two, I would assume maybe one of those is Reverend Dimsdale. So he's got a couple of people from the church there. And a leech. So remember, a leech was used to describe Roger Chillingworth, who is Hester's husband, who nobody knows that's what he is. And he is a leech, meaning he is a doctor. He's not necessarily trained as a doctor, but he has learned medical skills, and he does have some legitimate ability to heal people. And so this has become his place. I'm filling in gaps here. We have to sort of think about this on our own. But the fact that he's in the governor's home, we can infer that he's in good standing. He's clearly no longer living in the prison. So Hester is bold. She says, nevertheless, I will enter. Like, I'm coming in anyway. And she lets herself in to the front sort of threshold, or the entrance hall. And so there they are, and we get more details of the inside of the house. So the outside of the house, remember, is decorative with lots of sort of bright things into the kind of in the stucco, and the windows are glistening and bright. So it's very nice on the outside. Now we're going to get a description of the inside. It's a lofty hall. It is decorated with English antiques. So again, not very Puritan-like. There are even old books, beautiful upholstered furniture. It's very comfortable. There's even a reference to a lot of this is furniture from his home in England, the Elizabethan age. And there's also a lot of portraits in the house of his family members. And there's also like armor. So if you've ever been to a museum, or even like a castle in some other country, where you've seen perhaps armor, this is what people would wear when they were fighting in wars. They would have, like the knights in shining armor, they would have helmets, and they'd be fully covered in metal. Apparently, Governor Billingham at some point or another had been in the military, had fought in a war, and so he brought all of his armor to America and has it displayed in the house. So what I get from all of this is that he's very conceited and self-centered. He is really interested in, promoting his successes in all aspects of life and his importance overall. So Pearl loves this gleaming armor because it is reflecting, it's shiny, and so she can actually see her reflection in it. And she goes, "Look at Mother, I see you. Like I see you in the reflection of the armor." And what Hester notices is that the scarlet letter is like exaggerated in size in that reflection, probably because of the curvature of the armor. So again, just a very kind of heavy-handed way of reminding us that the scarlet letter is a symbol of a sin, and that this is all anybody recognizes in Hester is her sin. And so it does make me feel like she's not in a very good position to negotiate with the governor if she's hoping to convince him that she should be keeping her child, because not only is Pearl dressed like the scarlet letter, but now we're being told that the scarlet letter is the most dominant thing we see on Hester. So it makes Hester uncomfortable. Come on, let's move away from these, this armor. Let's look at the garden. Maybe we'll see flowers there, more beautiful ones than we find in the woods. Interestingly, not. The garden is pretty rough and tumble. There really aren't any amazing flowers out there. There's some rude and sort of immature bushes. There's a pumpkin vine. There are cabbages. There's a few rose bushes, but they're not very prolific. There's a couple apple trees. So it's not like a very fertile ground. Clearly the land is cold and dry, and maybe there's lots of clay soil. Things are not growing very well. This could be symbolic for maybe the Puritan community is not flourishing in the way that it should. Maybe we could sort of connect the rough garden to the community itself. But Pearl does see a rose, and she begins to cry for this rose, to the point where she like literally starts to freak out. And Pearl is crying so loud that Hester's like, please, please, you have to be quiet. The governor is coming, the gentleman along with him. So she hears the governor coming. She's determined to see him, even though the man at the door told her that she was not going to be able to. And Pearl, ignoring her mother, gives an even more extreme scream and then becomes silent, not from any notion of obedience, but because the quick and mobile curiosity of her disposition was excited by the appearance of those new personages. So she screams because she's being a defiant child, but then she immediately silences herself when she sees Governor Billingham and the minister and the leech coming into the room.